This is the Waupaca School District Board of Education meeting.
Mark, are you sharing your screen yet? Yes, you are. Okay. Very good. We will move on to Mr. Sari's report, please.
So despite the fact that our sub pool dropped from 77 last year to 14 this year, with only 6 substitutes that will sub anytime, any place, anywhere, or any position, we're being creative and staying open by repurposing our staff. The following are some statistics over the past quarter. Thursday, October 15th, we had 17 repurposed staff covering classrooms. That day, we secured 4 substitutes. 11 classroom teachers were out with COVID-related reasons, and 10 classroom teachers were out with non-COVID reasons. This same day, we had 30 total staff out or quarantined for a COVID-related reason, and 256 students. At this point, this day appears to be our peak, the highest amount of students and staff quarantined that we've had so far this year. Tuesday, October 20th and Thursday, October 29th, we were able to secure 9 substitutes each day. That's the highest amount of subs that we've been able to secure. The most classroom teachers that we had out for a COVID-related reason on any given day was Friday, October 16th and Friday, October 27th, with 14 both days. The interesting thing is, as the county numbers continue to climb and break records, our COVID related impact seems to decline. At a minimum, it's plateaued, but it also seems to have a trend line of less and less students and staff being impacted. So we're pretty excited about that. And that it's not only for our district, but it's other districts around the state as well and in our county. Again, just why are we able to stay safely open? We accredit it to our amazing staff who continue to do the right things inside and outside of the school day. In addition, our staff continues to support one another and fill in for each other as needed. That's very important, and we're appreciative of that. Again, our A-B day schedule for 7th through 12th grades significantly reduces the number of daily contacts for our students and staff. As you know, we are the only district in our county that has not had to move from one learning mode to another. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, when we hired an extra nurse, now having 3, which allows us to do a more thorough job of training staff and students on health and safety precautions, communicating with our families, and then of course that necessary contact tracing that our nurses are able to stay on top of. Other area districts have 1 nurse or no nurses, but we are able to keep on top of our contact tracing. Right from the beginning, we followed the sibling exclusion practice, where if one sibling is ill, the rest of the siblings in that household remain home. And the seating charts that we have in every classroom and lunchroom also support our physical distancing and our contact tracing efficiency. We continue, our staff and students, even though there are some isolated cases of concern, overall a high level of fidelity in using the 3 Ws, and extensive sanitization and cleaning protocols are in place, including the use of daily fogging. I have, in a minute, I'll give you an update on our ionization system. And then finally, we believe also a consistent messaging to our families. We know that our families are receiving a lot of messages. We're appreciative of them reading and then following the information contained in those messages. As we frequently ended our district messages, and it's worth repeating, we're in this together. Our actions and our decisions impact others now more than ever. I'm also sharing in this report that was forwarded, I believe yesterday, a joint letter between the district and the WTA, just in case people weren't aware of seeing that. The letter speaks for itself. You can read that at your leisure. Also want to notify the board that we're back on track with our student representative for our Board of Education. Our student representative is Elizabeth Waite. She's a sophomore. And we also have a backup who is a freshman, Alyssa Durant. And we will begin with this student representative sitting at the board table in December. That meeting is Tuesday, December 8th. We're excited that our new SLO, our school liaison officer at the high school, is Officer Randy Bush. As you're aware, Officer Wes Zuby recently received a promotion, and Randy stepped up to our newest position stationed here at the high school. He has extensive experience. Previously, he was a firefighter in the Air Force for 6 years. He worked in Kenosha in the sheriff's deputy position there for 2 years. He worked at the state as an administrative law investigator and a park ranger. And during that time also worked water patrol for our own Waupaca County Sheriff's Department. His wife is an occupational therapist for the Stevens Point School District, so he has a level of familiarity with our district and schools in general. A little update on our grant writer. We're excited about the progress that he has made so far in just a short period of time, receiving a grant or being awarded a grant of $78,000 to our CVB, our Convention and Visitors Bureau, for negatively impacting businesses due to COVID, and this $78,000 will be a positive asset for our CVB. Greg continues to pursue other mental health grants for us, as well as maintaining his focus on economic development. And linked in this report is his monthly update for us here in the month of October. August Winters update I received from Matt yesterday and updated today. Matt Vassar, our Building and Grounds Coordinator. The high school ionization bars on our HVAC units are 90% complete. Air handlers 3 and 4 are not yet finished. We're hoping that can be, as soon as they get mailed to us, they can be installed. We're proud to be able to share that the WLC and the CEC ionizer installation is 100% complete. The middle school is about 60% complete with all of the electrical being finished. We're waiting on the bars that need to get hooked up in the coils. Matt found out today that tomorrow they will be adding bars to 3 more air handlers at the middle school, bringing this to approximately 80% complete. And they're estimating another 6 hours of work to finish up putting those air bars in the air handlers. And as Matt noted, we're at the mercy of the manufacturer in getting those completed and shipped to us. It was mentioned a little earlier in the meeting, but I just want to give another special mention regarding those CARES Act dollars that the towns of Farmington and Dayton gave or gifted their leftover dollars to our school district. We're very grateful for that. And I can accurately report that the town of Farmington gifted over 9,000 of their unused dollars towards hover cams for our remote learning work. And the town of Dayton is transferring over $24,000 to help offset the costs of our new ionization systems that are almost complete. And finally, this is the first time that we've had retirements considered so early in the school year. We want to recognize and give thanks to everyone and to wish them all the best in the future, those who have made notification to us that they're considering this or they have actually made their decision. We share sincere gratitude for our staff members who come to the recognition that retirement is in their future, as well as those who are making alternative career choices. We appreciate them and all that they've done and are continuing to do for our students and our community. We just found out today from the WRS that we are not alone, and they're reporting out that they have an increase of 22% of annuitants that at this time are now beginning to research regarding retirement, 20% higher increase at this point than typical.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sari. Are there any questions?
I have one. So the substitute teacher thing, you know, you have a certain number of subs. What did you say, like 9? And you're pulling the other subs from specialty teachers. How is that going? I mean, are they okay filling in like that? How are they meeting their responsibilities if they're like title teachers or whatever? How are they doing what they're supposed to do if they're in classrooms?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is something that does have consequences. When we're pulling our instructional coaches, our tech integration coaches, our librarians, our title teachers, and having them cover a class, they're not able to do what they normally do. It's just the fact of the matter. It isn't what we want. It isn't the way. Our preferred way would be to have enough subs to cover instead of repurposing staff. But Our goal is to remain, to have some level of in-person instruction. And at this point, we think it's best to continue that way and repurpose these people. I don't know how sustainable this will be. It's very fortunate and happy and appreciative that they're team players and they're willing to jump in and do what's necessary so that we can remain in our in-person learning mode right now, Betty. Good question.
Yeah, I would put a big shout out to them because I think that's really hard to be hired to do one job that you're good at, and then you have to jump in every day and do something else. So talk about team players. That's really admirable of them. So please extend a big thanks to them.
Will do. Thank you, Betty.
Other questions or comments? There being none, we'll move on to monitoring with summer school.
I believe John or Mike are going to take that.
I'll take it, Ron. Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, very well.
So much like many of the things that we've talked about or have completed in the last 6 to 9 months, things are different. And summer school was not kept out of that. So our summer looked vastly different from what it has in the past. And I'll just quickly go through this PowerPoint presentation. It's a little bit different because there wasn't as much to report. So if we go to slide 2, you will see the important numbers there are in the bottom right-hand corner of that slide, where you will see the number 13. That is the total number of summer school FTEs that we were able to earn this summer with our minutes. The number right above that is the total number of minutes that we were able to use, the 575,100 minutes. And the vast majority of those minutes, I would say 98 to 90%, 99% came from the high school online continuous progress courses. The next slide on there is just, I put these slides in. This is the report that we do annually. I put the report in this year because it's much shorter than it has been. It's usually somewhere around 8 or 9 pages. This year it's only 3 pages long, and you'll see that the name of the courses that we're running, the grade levels that ran those courses, the number of students in those courses, and I can let you look at this at your leisure, but I wanted to add those in there. And if you go to the slide 4, Mark, that's where we start our credit courses. So every course listed on this slide and the next slide are for half a credit. And it was remarkable, even though we had kind of a different summer, these online courses overall produced 70 total credits at the high school level. So that should be applauded to all the high school staff and Mike and Jen for being able to put that together. That is the reason that we have those 13 FTEs. And the next slide will show you the rest of those classes. It was important for the high school students to be able to do some credit recovery and continuous progress support, and we were able to do that even during the pandemic. And then the slide that Mark has up there now is the costing, and I put this one in and I compared it to last year just so you can see how big of a difference it was with the pandemic. This summer we had 18 total teachers and 2 support staff, which totaled $38,000 in costing. And on the next slide, you will see what it's normally like, where we have 67 staff, 30 support staff. So there was, although our FTEs were down, our costing for the district was down somewhere between 185 and 190,000 summer. So it was a really big difference with the pandemic from one summer to the next. And then the last slide that I put in there were proposed dates for the 2021 summer school. I would hope that we are back in person and back to operating procedures as normal, but these will be the 3 sessions that I put in as the proposed dates for them.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions?
I have one for John.
Yes.
John, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was just wondering, I know that the dollar amount that we spent was way down, and I know that the FTEs was way down. So how did we come out in terms of the costing per program? Were we basically still spending money, or did we actually gain a little money?
You know, Pat, I'm going to have to lean on Carl for that one because that all is brought into his annual reports and the 3-year rolling averages and things like that. So I'm unable to answer that.
Okay, and just from your own working with last summer, assuming things stay somewhat similar to the way things are right now, and having had a whole year of virtual under our belts, do you anticipate next summer to be about the same, or do you think that we'll have more students who'll be able to sign up? And I know it's just a guess, but just your opinion.
Yeah, my hope would be that we would have more students than normal, because I can anticipate maybe some staff putting in for online courses that we may not have had before at all grade levels. And seeing that we have an A-B schedule at the middle school and high school and 4 days a week here in person now, I would imagine that we can still run a summer school with those types of schedules if need be, if we're still in the same situation we are now. But I would like to think that we would get back to what we were doing and get back up to that 70 to 79 FTE.
And my final question, John, if somebody wanted to teach summer school next summer, given the circumstances that we're under, what are the qualifications for teaching a course? Do they have to be members of our staff, or how do we approach that?
We have always filled summer school positions with School District of Waupaca employees. If there was a class that we could not fill, I have reached out to neighboring districts to fill those positions. That's been at the high school based on the licensing and the credit recovery.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
You're
Sandy?
welcome.
Yes, I had just a question, and this would be the second page of the summer school courses. It looks like high school, the very first one, and maybe this is a general question. We have aerobics and individual lifetime. There's one teacher and one student. So is it that the teacher who teaches that is really a very part-time person, or is that person teaching other courses as well?
Seeing that that's a high school question, I'm going to defer to Mike on that one.
Sure. It is the same person who would be teaching multiple things at the same time. So so the student may have been doing independent work and doing it virtually, and that's the class that they wanted to take.
Okay, so there are other classes that the teacher would be teaching more than that one class.
Correct. So there might be 3 classes going on kind of at the same time, and they give instruction, and the teacher is there available to the students to help support them as they're going through it.
Okay, any other questions?
So I was
I could answer Pat's question as far as if it made a revenue or if it broke even. So basically, you take the math is 13 students times 0.4, and that gives you 5.2 students. Simple math, and it's not a 3-year rolling average, would take the 5.2 times $10,000. That's $52,000 in revenue, meaning that somewhere between about a $10,000 to the good.
Okay, Mr. Bell?
Oh, and Mark had additional information to provide.
Hey, Mark.
What I was going to say, back to your question in terms of what classes is that teacher teaching, they could be teaching a couple different of these physical education classes at the same time. The other thing is it gets tricky if you're talking about a senior needing course credit. Do we sometimes have smaller classes to help those students along? We may.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Sandy, when I taught summer school, I did like geometry, algebra 1, algebra 2, all at the same time.
Well, and it was easier to see in the math
Right.
for me.
But I mean,
because
that happens with a lot of teachers.
Same thing.
Yeah, same with English. We might have 20 students in the room, but we're working 3 or 4 different classes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? There being none, we'll move on to board reports, upcoming meetings, December 3, the policy committee meeting at 11 a.m. and December 8th, the regular board meeting at 5:15. We'll move on to the policy committee, Mr. Fair.
Okay, the policy committee met on October 22nd. The policy committee members were in attendance. That'd be Mark Povitsky and Sandy Robbins, myself, and all other members of the board were in attendance at one point or other in the meeting. The meeting had no action items. It was called to discuss a certain number of concerns that had come up over time, including questions on the equity policy or how our equity policy might impact school lunches as an example. We talked about communication policies and how we need to be conscientious of navigating those through the COVID situation. We talked a little bit about the consent agenda and the rules for setting it up and pulling out certain items and questions if they were to come up. Mr. Sari gave some background on that to the committee. We also talked a little bit about the financial reporting that the board receives on a monthly basis and as part of our monthly board agenda. And we requested through one of our members that we receive a monthly balance sheet in addition to our 4 financial reports. And then we talked about board monitoring. As everybody here knows, on the board, we have done most of our board monitoring in the past in person, in buildings. And of course, now with the changes in the COVID situation, that has come to a halt. So we talked about whether or not in the future we might be able to do some kind of board monitoring virtually. And I'm not sure where we're going to end up with that exactly, but we talked about it a little bit. We had a couple of other major items on our agenda that had to do with the Neola policies, which are very long and lengthy. And we agreed to forego any more discussion with that, or to talk about them on that date, because to talk about them will take a long period of time. So we have another meeting, as just mentioned, scheduled for December the 3rd. And I suspect that the Neola will probably be at the top of the list on that agenda. One little aside, I handed out to the board members that are present here tonight. One of the things we talked about when we were discussing the idea of an equity policy, that the board maybe adopt one. I told the members that I would put something together just as a jumping off spot with that idea in mind. So I know Mark and Betty and Steve Hackett, you're not here, so I couldn't give you a hard copy. I could certainly send you an email, but I'll read to you what I put together. It's very short, about 3 sentences, and then you can, we can talk about it at the next policy committee meeting if we like, or sometime in the future. But this is just a jumping off spot. So as the School District of Waupaca Equity Proclamation, that's just what I called it. As a board committed to excellence in education, we embrace the belief that our educational community is stronger when united. Therefore, we promise to promote a system that recognizes the equality of every member of the district's educational family. We pledge to provide a safe and welcoming setting for our young people, regardless of skin color, religious affiliation, economic status, sexual identity, or physical or cognitive needs. We will collaborate with city, state, and federal officials to promote a just, nurturing, and healthy environment for all. And that's the end of my.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
The Finance Committee had 2 meetings. The first was held on October 26th. And the main topic of discussion was to provide an opportunity for committee members and other board members and others who were present to just spend a little more time asking questions and examining the 2020-21 budget information that had been presented to the board on October 13. And I'm not going to review all of it because since that time, we've actually had the budget approval, and Mr. Hayek did a wonderful job bringing us up to date on some of the changes that are outlined in the committee meeting minutes. But I will just say that our tax levy ultimately went down slightly. It's lower than last year's, as was the total dollars that we are going to be levying for. And again, we had a lot of this discussion was reiterated and provided at our October board meeting when we did our budget approval. And then we also talked, as did the policy committee, about monthly financial reports and decided ultimately, and again, we don't have any recommendations or action that we took, but I think we ultimately reached a consensus that the board meeting, we aren't going to change the date of the board meeting. There were just too many competing factors to warrant that. And if we don't have financial reports ready in time because of the timing of the meeting, that once they are ready, they'll be sent to the board members and be included in the next meeting so that they'll be publicly posted. And as Pat Fair noted, we did spend some time, Carol sent me some information about a balance sheet. And so I do have some thoughts on that. Carol, I'll be getting back to you. And then we can talk about this as a committee. And then we did talk about future topics for finance committee meeting consideration. And it was a good list. I really appreciated that discussion and having the meeting. It's and then we adjourned. And then we had a second meeting on November 5th. And that was actually to review the 2019-2020 charter school annual authorizer report to the DPI that's due on December 1st. And administration assisted, or essentially took the reins in completion of this report for us as the authorizer. And I really like this report as a monitoring tool for both the board's work on its commitments in the contract and the Chain Exploration Center's commitments. So we had some discussion about the specific areas and suggestions for some items to be included in the authorizer operating expenses. And then we also looked at the narrative associated with the performance of the charter school according to the criteria that are outlined in the contract. And we also had a discussion then about which committee most appropriately handles that portion of the review, and it would be the instructional committee. So perhaps in the future, we'll have a joint meeting of instructional and finance to review this. But again, I want to say thank you to everybody who worked on this report. And we can talk a little bit more about the questions when it comes to the authorizing report. But thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? There being none, we'll move on to administration.
This first one, I think Mark has taken.
Yeah, so there's just, this is a, something that needs to be documented that was probably discussed before by the board when the authorization to move forward with the CEC was brought forward. That everybody was on the same page that essentially we'd be closing the Chain Lakes Elementary School. But as far as I can go back, the board never acted officially to do that. And so in order to clean up some of the DPI accounting things that we have to do for reporting purposes, they need an official board movement to close that so we can get off our school district of Waupaca records according to the DPI.
Okay, is there a motion?
I recommend, I move that we take formal action and vote to approve the closure of Chain Lakes Elementary School, which has now been converted to the Chain Exploration Center.
Motion by Sandy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hackett. Roll call?
Aye.
Betty Mannion,
Yes.
Pat Fair,
Aye.
Mark Polzinski,
Aye.
Cindy Robinson,
Yes.
Dale Phelps,
Yes.
Steve Johnson.
Yes. Next item?
Steve, I have a question on that first.
Yes.
Before we move on, Mark, do we have to do the same thing in terms of formally naming the CEC?
That was probably done when you guys did that.
Okay.
I assume they didn't ask for that part.
Yeah.
It's already there. What I
Okay.
see.
All right.
Great question.
We will need to change the sign on the school.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, conversation of inclement weather days.
You want to take it or you
The
want me?
conversion of inclement weather days, it's just with, you know, the idea here is that, with as much online learning that's been going on in the school district of Waupaca since this COVID pandemic, and our ability to quickly move in the advent of Schoology, the new learning management system, how we provide the different learning option modalities. The reality of this generation of students knowing about snow days is probably gone, because we have that option to be able to do live and remote learning, on-demand learning with a simple flip of a switch, essentially. And so we just wanted to bring it to the board's attention, the community's attention, to make sure everybody's on the same page, that we're not seeing something different than what other people are seeing. You know, we spent a lot of time building the school calendars for the next couple of years, and remember, based off one year, a couple of years ago, when we had 10 or 12 snow days and making days up and revisiting all those different things, our current calendars have some what if days built in if we exceed the 3 that we already have currently built in. And so by approving this, we're saying we don't have to worry about will we have to take any one of those days back, those planned vacation days back. Like, for example, I believe one of them is the Monday after Easter. You know, that was one of those days, if we had to exceed the 3 or 4 or 5 days, the inclement weather days, we would have to take that day back in order to meet minutes of instruction. We won't need to do that anymore, because if the weather provides us an unfortunate ability not to have kids in the buildings, then we're just going to have a live remote or on-demand learning day, so we're not going to lose instruction.
Yeah, you want to make it clear, though, that there are no built-in snow days into the calendar. In other words, if we were to call it, the teachers would have to make that up.
Correct.
And we've never had those days in the past either. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, so I apologize. When I said built-in snow days, I mean, we would still have been within the legal limits of hours of instruction if we didn't make up every single day.
And in the past, we have allowed
With online, so we need every minute that we possibly can to make as much gains as much as possible. So that's why we're saying too, there isn't going to be, you know, essentially in the nutshell, there isn't going to be snow days anymore that we're not going to have school. When the weather is bad, we're going to flip to online learning.
So Mark, to follow up with Dale's question a little bit, so just playing out a scenario, if we knew that tomorrow was going to be a snow day because of our weather day, do that an announcement will go out to everybody that tomorrow's day will be a virtual remote day for everybody, and just make that announcement either the night before or the morning of, or however you do that now.
Absolutely. Instead of saying, you know, due to whether the school's going to be canceled, you know, whatever the case would be, there'd be an addition to that remote learning will proceed as normal.
And
Are we having to do anything different in terms of supplying teachers with extra equipment so they have some?
So to have those lesson plans kind of laid out, you know, typically it's pretty rare that where you're an unforeseen inclement weather day totally out of the blue happens. So how can we be as prepared as possible? So with Schoology, you know, there are teachers that have their lesson plans, videos created for the week at a time that can be put out there as well.
I'm just thinking more in terms of things like having a laptop that they take home with them every day, or.
Yeah.
Every teacher in the district has either a laptop or a Chromebook at their disposal to take home at this time.
Question, do the little ones bring their Chromebooks home every night?
The little ones, I believe John has them bringing them home on Tuesday for Wednesday, but they may be bringing them home every night. Right now, I know for sure that 5 through 12 does bring their device home every night.
At the elementary level, 3rd and 4th bring them home every night, and they are working on K1-2 of doing the same thing.
Oh, okay. Because if there was a snow day on a Monday or a Friday or a Tuesday, They might not have their Chromebook with them.
Yep.
Correct.
And that's kind of why we're having this conversation now, so we can prepare for those different things.
Mhm.
Don't have anything with weather going on anytime in the near future.
As Mr. Flayton said, probably he didn't say what he alluded to, probably going forward, we'll be a one-to-one district all the way through 1 through 12, with them being able to have the option of taking those devices home.
Learning days, keeping the same schedule, 178 instructional days that are in our calendar, and ensuring that the 2 break days remain as is.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Just a question.
Second,
Oh, sorry.
Okay, second by Betty. Okay, questions, discussion?
Mark, are we under the same obligations with our virtual learning minutes as we are with? No.
No, it's not the same number of minutes or instructional hours. The DPI has not come out and said that 7 hours of in-person learning equals 3.5 hours of online learning. So they are leaving that up to districts to decide, and they're really going more towards that idea of, I would say, an alignment with our prioritization of standards and our targets. How long will it take you as a student to achieve minimum proficiency on that standard?
So on an anticipated snow day, how do
I would expect about half as much time as what a student would be spending in school at the upper levels. So probably about 3.5 hours. And as you work from, around that 6 education at the younger levels is academic based, but there's also a lot of that socialization. And that is just not, something we're going to be able to reproduce online at the same rate, I guess I would say.
Okay, other questions or discussion?
No, I'll make a comment. I heard from some folks, and they wanted to make sure to remind that some of the best memories they've had with their own children was on a snow day. So I'm glad to hear that that we're expecting at the younger grades maybe hour to 2 hours tops, and so they could still spend that time with their families and go out and hit the sled hill and things like that. That's socialization.
Real world learning, I appreciate that, Mr. Feld.
Yeah, that's all right.
And that was shared out with our teachers in that joint statement too. We reverted back to, or referred back to what we had sent out in March along those hours. I don't have those off the top of my head, but at max, it was about half as much time. But again, that was for the upper grade levels, down to just a couple of hours.
I'm sure there's going to be a learning curve with this too when we have our first one.
We're going through a learning curve right now with
Sure.
our live, remote, or on-demand students as far as how much time. Absolutely. Or the A-Day, B-Day kids when they're not in person. Making sure that it's a balance isn't the right word, but within good harmony.
There being none, roll call.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Betty Mannion,
yes.
Matt Corral,
Aye.
Sue Robinson,
Yes.
Dale Bell,
Yes.
Steve Johnson.
Yes. Okay, update on food pickup at the WLC and WHS.
Mark, did Dar forward to you the report that she put together? Maybe not. Dar, can you hear us?
Who's on?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can.
Can't.
Do you want to provide us?
You can?
Yes, we can hear you, Dar.
Yes, I can. I'm just gonna start with the CEC. What I did was take into consideration each school and their learning modes and what needed to take place for each individual school and what the priorities were for that school. So for the CEC, we have 26 students signed up to receive meals to take home for Wednesday, and that's 101 meals that are sent home on Tuesday afternoon for those students to take home. They are required to sign up, and we're open to signing up at any time. The Learning Center has a different little bit of mode because we also have 156 students signed up to take home meals on Tuesday, and that's one breakfast and one lunch. And so we served 468 meals to those students. My food service department delivers it from 2:15 to 2:30 to the classrooms. And then also on Wednesdays, that's where we have the community and families come in, as well as our virtual and remote and at-home families. So the community families, we have 8 families with 14 children that pick up at the Learning Center. And the virtual, remote, and at-home students, we have 20 families with 46 children. Now, these people pick up for 5 days. So in the 12-day period, we sent home 1,358 meals to that program. The middle school has AB students and 5th grade. So we have meals being sent home daily. Sometimes there's 2 meals, sometimes there's 1 meal. On Tuesdays, we have the 5th and 6th getting 1. So, but as a total on that week, or I should say on the 12 days, we sent home 854 meals. The high school, again, has the AB schedule, and we have 51 signed up on A, 53 signed up on B, and we sent home a total of 862 meals on the AB schedule. But also we have the pickup at the community level from 4:30 to 6 p.m. We have 9 families in the community with 22 children, and the virtual, remote, and at home, we have 27 families with 66 children. So again, those are 5-day meals that they pick up. And so we serve them 1,464 meals. So with this model, we were able to access every single learning mode, whether you were at home on just Wednesdays, whether you were an AB schedule. It hit everything, whether you were just remote, it hit the community. So our total for the 12 serving days, we served pickup of 5,116. Sent home meals were 2,294 for a total of 7,410 meals in 12 days. And that's 1,618 meals per day. So we're really doing a good job. We have plans to put out a flyer to let people know what is going on, because some people weren't quite aware of when it started or what they were signing up for. So we're working on that. But right now, it's really doing well. There's a lot of lists and tallies, but my people again rise to the level of what we do, and that's what we do is we feed people, and we take care of business. So I'm really proud of what we're doing right now, but we certainly can offer that more to the community and to those people that aren't aware in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Wow,
Yes.
that's an amazing amount of meals. Congratulations.
Dara,
Thank you.
This is Sandy. I was just wondering if you have delivered any meals to families. Have there been requests and or need for that you're aware of?
The only meals that were delivered were of a family that was delivered by Leah, the middle school psychologist, because there was an event in their family that they were unable to pick up. And so she did deliver them. There were times when people had an issue that they couldn't make it that day, and we provided them the next day or the following day to a different alternative to pick up. If they couldn't make it at the high school, we offered to pick up at the learning center. And so we constantly, the parents call and say, I can't make it this time. We constantly redo our lists and make sure that everybody is able to have that service available. But as far as delivery in itself, it was just that one time with Leah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Again, please extend our sincere thanks to your entire staff and accept them as well for yourself. It's an incredible job. With that,
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to the Charter School Authorizer Annual Report.
I'd like to make a motion so we can get discussion,
Good.
underway, short discussion. But I would move that we approve the 2019-20 Charter School Authorizer Annual Report as most recently presented, with the understanding that once the cost of the audit is known, that number will be entered where the word audit.
Okay, there's a motion to accept the Authorizer Annual Report with the understanding that the audit dollar amount will be incorporated into the report when received.
Second.
Is there a second? Dale Feld? Okay, discussion.
I had earlier sent Carol a series of questions. They were short questions. I'm not going to go over them now. Everybody on the board would have been copied. There wasn't anything really substantive. It was just really wondering, what do these numbers mean? And Carol, you had asked me, because I think I had pointed out that we have on the authorizer report 2 entries for the function code, 230,000. One is general administration and one is utilities. And you asked me, did I want you to combine? I don't have any skin in the game about combining that. If the BPI cares, they'll let you know. So I do have a question though that I didn't ask, and it has to do with the changes between the supplement that we received on the 5th and one that came in yesterday, and it has to do with central services information that you identified as being prorated cost of phones. And by the way, this supplement was so helpful, so thank you so much for taking the time. And in the 10th, it's a little, on the 10th report, it's a little under $1,000, but before it had been substantially higher. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what might have changed, or if there was something discovered, or.
That's exactly what happened. I found a formula that was not where it was supposed to be and corrected it.
Been there. So.
Yeah, it was pulling in a number it shouldn't have
Okay,
been.
that makes perfect sense. Thank you again for all of that. I'm curious to know if you found the exercise of doing the supplement helpful at all, or interesting, or you don't have to answer that. Maybe not the.
It provided me with an opportunity to do some rechecking that obviously caught that one, so it was useful.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any other discussion or questions with regard to the Authorizer's report? There being none, roll call.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Betty Moore, Pat Fair.
Aye.
Mark Polzinski,
Yes.
Sandy Robinson,
Yes.
Dale Felt,
Yes.
Steve Johnson.
Yes. Okay, notice the spring election. Ron, you want to take that?
Sure. Up for election this spring, reading off of our document that was linked, we have 3 incumbents: Sandy Robinson, Mark Polovinsky and Elizabeth Mannion. That'll be on the ballot for this coming spring.
That would be Betty, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Just checking. Okay.
just checking.
Okay, obviously you all are aware of, or I would think, and if you have any questions, you can certainly get in touch with Carol, of your need to declare intent one way or the other. So be mindful of that if you would, please. Any questions? We'll now move on to appoint of a deputy clerk for the elections. Historically, Carol has been willing to do so, and if she will accept said appointment, I will appoint Carol to do so again.
Okay,
Okay?
Sorry, I thought that was a motion. I was gonna second it.
Well, if it's an appointment, so it
Okay.
doesn't require.
Gotcha.
Though you can second the
Yeah,
appointment.
yeah. I'll second the
Okay, Pat
amendment.
Fair seconds the appointment. You're in.
okay, goody.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Motion by Sandy to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dale Feld. Is there any discussion
I
or
just-
questions?
Yeah, I have a question about and this is just a informational question. Everything on the consent agenda is great, but I'm hoping Joe's, our activities director is online. Joe, are you with us?
I don't see him.
Oh, rats. Okay. I was gonna just ask him about the upcoming winter sports season in terms of if he had any ideas of what's happening there, if he's heard anything that we haven't already heard. I mean,
Right.
football and soccer are pretty well behind us or will be soon, and just wondering what the status of all of that's gonna be.
Right now, we're planning on still moving forward with the strategies, the mitigation strategies that we have on hand. We talk about it every week with Dr. Happ and Jed. I know that we're looking at making some adjustments to our athletic handbook, our code, to put in a paragraph regarding, I believe it's called duty, what do we call that? Remember the term, the legal term?
Due diligence.
Yeah, some of them about the risk that they understand, that they're taking the risk of the potential of being in contact with more people to get the virus. So we're still working on that, but we anticipate everything's a go.
Do you anticipate the schedules, like the numbers of games played, whatnot will be similar? I know, a lot of the others was cut down.
I think there'll be some cut down, but otherwise be fairly similar. Right now, it's our understanding wrestlers have to wear a mask when they're wrestling. And the basketball players have to wear a mask while they're playing. So we're gonna see how that goes as far as with sweat. And, a wrestler, you know what wrestling is about, but you still have to wear a mask. And none of us understand the logic behind that. But it is what it is.
Yeah, right.
All right, perhaps you
Thank you.
can have him supply us with just kind of a brief recap of where we are on that, and also whatever the WIA general requirements might be.
Yep.
As well as the protocol that we'll be using.
Yeah, especially, Ron, from the point of view of spectators. I mean, I know what the football was all about, but, these are indoor facilities now. And some of us who might want to go without having a student or a relative there, may or may not even be able to. I mean, we
They
don't,
won't be able to, Pat, at this point where it's the same type of a strict
okay,
way to go about it, but Dr. Happ did it's not a contract, but did contact the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the interns, the graduate students, and they have done a study, and they're finishing that up here in the next several weeks, and they'll be presenting it to us, and it's gonna compare the way we're handling our protocols based on what the research says and based on what the WIA says. And they'll be reporting that to us. But with our activities being indoors and with our ionization systems in place, we feel pretty good about being able to do these activities inside safely.
yeah.
Okay, perhaps because we are getting off of the consent agenda and into territory that hasn't really been posted, if you could give us a little bit of an update, that would be appreciated, and share that with the entire board. Okay, thank you. We do have a motion and second. Any other discussion or comments? There being none, roll call.
Steve Hackett,
Aye.
Betty Mannion,
Yes,
Pat Fair,
Aye.
Mark Polzinski,
Aye.
Sandy Robinson,
Yes.
Dale Belt,
Yes.
Steve Johnson.
Yes. That brings us to the conclusion of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Dale Feld,
Second.
second by Sandy Robinson to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, everyone, for your time. Have a great evening. Stay safe.